They snatched me from my bakery, a cloud of flour and fear, and shoved me into a world of tailored suits and cold violence. My captor was Eldric Volkov, a man whose name was a synonym for monster, a mafia enforcer with eyes like glacial ice and a reputation for brutality. But as he held me in that isolated safe house, protecting me from his own kind, I discovered the cracks in his armor. The monster had a heart, and it was broken. And the most dangerous thing wasn't the gun he carried. It was the way he looked at me, like I was the missing ingredient for his redemption. I was supposed to be his prisoner, but instead I became the one thing the wolf couldn't live without. The wind always whistles through the fire escapes on my street, but that morning it sounded different, lower, like a warning. I climbed the steps to our rooftop. From up there, my neighborhood looked peaceful. My bakery below was dark and quiet. Back inside the bakery, something made me look up. Crows, dozens of them, perched on the wires outside, still and watching. Then I heard it, not a normal car horn, but a specific blaring pattern. The sound of screeching tires, of a guttural tongue I didn't understand, but whose meaning was terrifyingly clear. A door burst open. My brother Owen, his face white as sheet dough. "Alara, they're here. The Volkovs." Black SUVs swarmed the street. Men in expensive suits moved with a brutal military precision. Panic lanced through me. This wasn't a protection racket shakedown. This was a siege. Owen was trying to jam a metal door holder through the door handles, his hands shaking violently. "Owen, the back alley." I grabbed his arm. "Run, Alara. Don't look back. Just go," he pleaded, shoving me toward the rear exit. But as I fumbled with the bolt on the back door, I did look back. And I saw him. He was a giant. A mountain of a man in a long black wool coat that swung around his calves. His shirt beneath was starked white, open at the collar despite the cold, revealing a glimpse of tanned, scarred skin. His face, it was all hard planes and angles, a history of violence written in the pale line across his brow and the slight twist in his nose. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. They weren't wild or frenzied. They were the color of glacial ice, and they were fixed on me with an unnerving, absolute focus. He was the calm at the center of the storm he'd brought with him. The world narrowed to a tunnel. I wrenched the door open and fled into the alley, my boots slipping on the wet cobblestones. A hand closed around my upper arm, yanking me to a stop so hard my teeth snapped together. It wasn't rough. It was immovable, like being caught by a machine. I screamed. I kicked back, my heel connecting with a shin encased in fine leather. He didn't even grunt. I twisted and sank my teeth into the wrist of the hand that held me. I tasted wool, salt, and the faint, clean scent of sandalwood soap. He made a sound then, a low rumble of surprise more than pain. His other arm banded around my waist, lifting me clean off my feet as if I weighed nothing. I was crushed against a chest that felt like solid oak, my struggles utterly futile. He carried me not to one of the SUVs, but to a separate, sleek black sedan idling nearby. He bundled me into the back seat, his body a shield between me and the chaos, the sound of shattering glass from my bakery, a short burst of gunfire, a scream that was abruptly cut off. He slid in beside me, filling the space with his immense presence. The door thudded shut, sealing us in silence. The driver, a shadowy figure behind a privacy screen, pulled away smoothly. I scrambled to the far side of the leather seat, pressing myself against the door. He made no move toward me. He just sat, watching me with those unsettlingly calm eyes, pulling a white handkerchief from his pocket and dabbing at the small bite mark on his wrist. "Who are you?" I finally spat, the words trembling. He finished his task, folded the handkerchief neatly, and returned it to his pocket. "Ivan," he said. His voice was a deep, low vibration that I felt in my bones. "Ivan, The name was a legend, a nightmare whispered in the dark. The last wolf of the Volkov bratva. A man who felt no pain. A monster. What do you want from me? My voice was a broken thing. He turned his head to look out the tinted window as the city lights began to thin. For you to be safe, Alara? The sound of my name on his lips, spoken with such quiet certainty, was more terrifying than any threat. By kidnapping me? By destroying my home? My family? It was not I who gave that order, he said, his gaze still fixed on the passing darkness. But I would not have left you there. Not with them. The drive lasted for hours. He never spoke again. He just sat, a statue radiating controlled power and an unnerving stillness. I watched his hands resting on his thighs. These were not the hands of a mindless brute. They were the tools of a master craftsman whose medium was violence. We arrived at a modern cabin, a stark composition of concrete, glass, and dark wood nestled in a snow-dusted forest. It was beautiful and utterly isolated. He led me inside. The air was warm. It was the opposite of what I'd expected. He showed me to a spacious bedroom with its own bathroom. You will be safe here. Rest. He left, closing the door softly behind him. I heard the distinct click of a lock engaging. A prisoner in a gilded cage. That first night I didn't sleep. I listened to the silence of the woods. I heard him moving around in the main living area. Once, I crept to the door and peered through the keyhole. He was sitting at a minimalist desk, bathed in the blue glow of multiple computer monitors. A single glass of amber liquid in his hand. His profile was stark, pensive. He looked less like a monster and more like a king exiled in his own fortress. The days that followed were a steady and surreal tension. My fear was a live wire, but it was constantly short-circuited by his bizarre civility. He stocked the kitchen, so I started baking again out of habit. The smell of baking bread and cinnamon seemed to confuse him. One afternoon, I pulled a tray of croissants from the oven. I turned and found him standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame, just watching me. He'd been there for who knows how long. His gaze was intense. I froze, a rabbit in a wolf's sight. They smell good, he said, the words seeming unfamiliar in his mouth. Would you like one? The question was out before I could stop it. He hesitated, then gave a single curt nod. I placed one on a small plate and handed it to him. He took it, then took a bite. He chewed slowly, his eyes closing for a brief second. A look of something like profound peace crossed his face, smoothing out the harsh lines of pain and anger. It was gone in an instant, but I'd seen it. Thank you, he said, his voice gravelly. He finished the croissant and left without another word. The next day, a single, perfect white winter rose lay on the kitchen island. No note, just the flower. My heart did a stupid, treacherous flip. Over the next days, the tension would simmer and then boil over. A brush of his hand while cleaning a weapon would send a jolt through me. A heated glance across the room would make my knees weak. It was fierce and tender by turns. 1 week later, a blizzard hit, killing the power and leaving the generator struggling against the deepening cold. I found him in the living room, cursing softly in Russian. The fire in the modern gas fireplace was low. Let me, I said. I knelt and began to adjust the vents, feeding it more oxygen. The flames leapt higher. You should be resting, he said, his tone dismissive. I'm not made of glass, I retorted. I can build a fire. I felt his eyes on me as I worked. I blew gently on the embers, and the flame roared to life. When I looked up, he was watching me not as a captive. The heat in his gaze had nothing to do with the fire. It was raw, primal, and it stole the air from my lungs. My skin prickled. For a long, charged moment, we just stared at each other across the small space, the storm raging outside. I broke the gaze, my cheeks flaming. I stood up, brushing off my knees. There, that should hold. He didn't thank me. He just continued to look at me with that devastating intensity. Why did you bring me here? I whispered, needing to shatter the silence. Because if I did not, they would have, he said, his voice low and intimate in the dark. They would have used you, broken you, thrown you away. He finally looked away into the fire. I am not what they say of me, Alara. Then what are you? I pressed, taking a step closer. A man, he said, the word heavy with exhaustion. A man who is tired of blood, a man who wants peace. But peace does not exist for someone like me. Maybe it does, I heard myself say, my voice softer now. You just haven't found it yet? He turned his head back to me, and the look in his eyes was so full of naked longing and hopelessness that it cracked something open inside me. The last of my hatred melted away, replaced by a terrifying, overwhelming surge of compassion and something else. Something far more dangerous. The night wore on. We sat on opposite ends of the large sofa, but the space felt charged. I could feel the heat of his body, smell his clean sandalwood scent. Did you ever, I began, my voice husky, love someone? He went very still. The question hung in the air between us. Once, he said after a long pause, long ago. What happened? He took a deep breath, the sound ragged. She died. Because of me? He turned to look at me, and the pain in his eyes was so absolute. It was a physical blow. I chose the war over her. I chose my duty to the family over her safety. When I came back from a business trip, she was gone. A message from a rival family. The silence that followed was profound. I saw the war in his eyes, the pull of the monster he was supposed to be versus the man he was trying to become. And I saw the exact moment the man won. He didn't move, but the way he looked at me changed. He closed the distance between us, his hand coming up to cup the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. His touch was not gentle, it was desperate, claiming. He pulled me to him, and his mouth crashed down on mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was weeks of suppressed fear, anger, and aching need exploding at once. His lips were hard and demanding. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my hands fisting in the lapels of his coat, pulling him closer. He ground into my mouth, a raw, animal sound, and the vibration went straight through me. We were enemy and ally, captor and captive, and in that moment, none of it mattered. When we finally broke apart, gasping for air, our foreheads rested together. His breath was as ragged as mine. Dawn broke, the storm had passed. I found him asleep on the couch, one arm thrown over his eyes. In sleep, he looked younger, the harsh lines of his face softened. The vulnerability on display made my chest tighten. I wanted to trace the line of his jaw, to smooth the worry from his brow. Then the crows came. Minutes later, an helicopter followed. Watching him face down his brother's men from the window, I saw the wolf surface. The cold fury on his face was terrifying. But when he came back inside, covered in a fine layer of snow, his eyes found mine. And the fury was still there, but it was now layered with a ferocious, protective possessiveness that should have scared me. It didn't. I stepped toward him, my heart hammering against my ribs. Would you protect me? I asked, my voice steady. Even if it meant war with my own blood. This gave me the courage to stand before his brother Kale. The visceral knowledge of the good man I knew was buried inside Ethan. Was worth saving from the damnation of killing his own brother. My words to Kale weren't just political. They were personal, fueled by the love I now fiercely protected. We didn't want a kingdom built on fear. We wanted a home. If this story stirred your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a dose of love dopamine. I'll keep bringing you more tales of passion, heartbreak, and redemption crafted for the ones who still believe in love. And if you stayed until the very end, thank you. You're the kind of soul who believes in love, even when it hurts. Love harder, dream deeper, until the next heartbeat.